You've spent an entire career fighting fires and rescuing the injured, sick, and dying. But that's all over now. What do you do when the sirens stop, you've hung up your gear, and you walk out of the firehouse for the last time? What do you do with your life when the smoke clears? Welcome back to the When the Smoke Clears podcast. I'm Russ Miles. I'm here with Tony Ben Cosme. Thank you guys very much for joining us. Thank you very much for supporting. Thank you very much for listening. We really appreciate it. And now Tony's going to tell us about who we got on the mic with us today.
Absolutely, Russ. Yeah, I want to thank everybody for joining us one more time. It's a pleasure. Our next guest is a good friend of mine. I've known him a long time. We kind of grew up together in the fire service, even though he's younger than me, but he's been doing this for a while. I learned a lot about the job from this individual. He's a retired Battalion Chief, 29 years of service. He was, when he left, he was part of our Fire Rescue Occupational Medical Services, FROMS, where we do all our medical and our physicals and a lot of good stuff on cancer prevention. He headed that. He also ran the recruiting office for a good little bit, as far as getting new recruits into the job and advertising. And also along with that, he did the candidate physical ability testing, our CPAT testing, which is across the country now. At this point, it's nationwide. It's a national standard. So with further ado, let me introduce a good friend of mine, one of Montgomery County's finest. He was a local kid, Tony Coleman. Tony, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Tony. Just to clarify one thing, I was assisting recruiting officer, didn't want to let everyone know I was in charge of recruiting. But I had a great time. Thank you for allowing me to be on your podcast. It truly is a pleasure.
Yeah, man, we're very grateful to have you. Thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate taking time out of your busy retirement schedule to come and talk to us for a little bit.
No worries, brother. I'm here for you.
So we like to start out things by asking people to give their origin story, so to speak. So tell us a little bit about where you were born and where you grew up.
Okay, a quick synopsis. I was born at Holy Cross Hospital in 1971. From there, my parents, we lived actually off Andrew Street, which is Company 18th area, which is all Blue Hill Road and Wheaton area. And then from the Wheaton area, probably around fifth grade, we moved up to the Olney area. And if anybody doesn't know where Olney is, back then it was 2-lane roads heading up Georgia Avenue, where it was like keep going for another 20 minutes when you see the first traffic light, flash leisure world, and keep going another 20 minutes. But it was pretty far up the road back then. And I grew up in Olney for most of my teenage years. Middle school, I went to Farquhar. Then I went to high school at Sherwood High School. And then at Sherwood High School, that's when I became affiliated with the Sandy Spring Volunteer Fire Department.
Okay. So what was life growing up for you? Like, were you active in sports or what did you like to do as a kid?
As a kid, you know what? I was pretty active outside because back then only was a lot of cornfields, a lot of outside activities, riding my bike. I did play some sports. I played soccer a lot, believe it or not. I didn't take interest in football. Basketball, I played recreationally. My dad used to take me fishing and do activities with me, but we had a great relationship as far as a father and son outside of athletics, just enjoying each other's company. And my mom, she was always at work. So me and my brother were basically raising ourselves until our parents came home. Back then, it was with two parents working to afford where we were at. They had to make sacrifices.
Latchkey kids, yeah.
Yeah, how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I had an older brother, but he passed away. And that was it, just me and him.
Gotcha. So a lot of playing with you guys, a lot of entertaining yourselves while parents were at work. Gotcha. Like Tony said, latchkey kid. Okay. And so you said in high school, that was about the time that you got affiliated with the fire service. So tell us a little bit about that. Like how did you get involved in the fire service? How did you find out about
it? When I grew up in Olney, believe it or not, my house sat near the intersection of 108 and Queen Elizabeth. So whenever the fire trucks used to go down 108 heading towards the Laytonsville Fire Department towards 108 heading, I guess that would be west, I would always grab my bike and watch the fire trucks. I could see them back then all the way from Georgia 108 coming down the road. And I used to hear the sirens. I used to just sit out near the fence and watch them go by for like 4 or 5 years. And said, man, this would be an amazing job. And I always had the plastic fire hat, always had the fire trucks. Actually, like when I was probably riding a bicycle, probably when I was like probably 11 or 12, there was actually a large volume house fire, like 5 or 6 houses down the street. So I actually got the opportunity to see what the fire department actually did before the fire department even arrived. By the time I got there, they had just dialed 911, but the whole house was almost fully involved. And then that just inspired my career. And my mom took me in there at the age of 16. And I said, you know what, I'm going to try and be a high school cadet with the Sandy Spring Volunteer Fire Department. So I went in there and she signed the form with me. Back then, you couldn't do it on your own. I'm not sure how it is now. And then from there, that inspired my true love of the fire department, which allowed me to do the high school cadet program back at Sherwood High School for my senior year.
Okay. So it was just purely based on seeing the fire trucks go up and down the road, chasing them down with your bike. That early experience with that house fire, that definitely pushed you towards the fire service.
Exactly, but I never admit that I was that squirrely. But
No worries.
also it was the joy of as a young kid, I always like satisfying people and making them happy. So I think some of those personal traits and characteristics translate into the fire department because I always want to satisfy and make people happy. So those two kind of go hand in hand if you run an emergency situation when you can leave a situation better than you found it.
Yeah, I think Tony and I both definitely understand that being in the service field because that's what fire department is. It's a service field, so we understand that 100%. You mentioned about the high school cadet program. Tell us a little bit about that. What was that all about?
I'm not sure how it is now, but back then we used to be able to gain EMT or basic firefighter 1 and 2 in high school. So what that entailed from us would be we'd go to our normal high school to around 12 o'clock, and then we would drive to the old training academy back then, which is located off Great Seneca Highway near Shady Grove Hospital, and we go there from 1 to 4 o'clock. And there we do the same thing they do with all the other classes, EMT or the essentials, firefighter 1 and 2. We do all the curriculum there for a year, firefighter 1 and firefighter 2. And then from there, it would allow us to get hired when we turned 18 or 19 if we wanted to, or if not, we could take those skills and abilities back to the local volunteer fire and rescue corporation where we were at, and then use those skills there to provide a service to the citizens of Montgomery County.
Okay.
It's basically like that right now. Yeah, they still do something similar.
Yeah.
So you're going through the cadet program. You're going through firefighter 1 class. You're going through firefighter 2 class. Was there a point in time during the training where you had any experience that made you say, wow, like this really is what I want to do, or this really is what the fire department is all about? Did you have any experience like that?
I can tell you as a whole, when I first joined the fire department, I loved every aspect of the training. It was just wanting to absorb everything with a sponge-like mentality. It was great. I said, man, this is awesome. And I can do this. And you can break stuff without getting yelled at. Where the house, you couldn't do anything. You could do drywall. You could put ladders against the building and not against the house. You could basically just do what you wanted to do in a controlled environment. But when you first, I don't know how it is for everybody else out there, but I think the true moment when you decide if you want to embrace this job is doing the first fire simulation, I think. Because then that's when you put all these skills you've been practicing, you've heard about, then all of a sudden you're breathing your own air, and then all of a sudden the room is dark, it's smoky, you start to feel a little bit of heat, then you see that orange across the ceiling. That's when I think, at least for me, that's when you can decide if you're really going to enjoy this career or if you're need to find something else. But everybody's different. But that was the aha moment for myself.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's when things got real, and you understand, okay, is this for me or is it not?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Cool. So you go through class, and then you said you got on with the Sandy Spring Volunteer Fire Department.
After about 16 to about 18 years old, I was blessed back then because my birthday was in November and they were starting to recruit class in January. So I got hired when I was 18 years old. I graduated high school in the previous June. So I was only unemployed after high school for about 6 or 7 months, and I had my first job offer. And even though we had firefighter 1 and 2 and EMT, back then they still had a pop out class. And what a pop out class was is that in order for the county to expedite resources to the fire service, and then also in order to save money, because back then they were under fiscal responsibilities because the budgets were up and down, nobody knew what to expect. They said, hey, if we can teach these volunteer firefighters for 2 weeks, a quick little academy, get them out in the field, and in 3 weeks they'll be minimum staffing. That was an advantage to the fire service.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, one, that you actually knew what you wanted to do at a young age. That's a big one. A lot of cats don't necessarily know what makes them they have an idea, but they don't really know what they want to do. And then you knew what you were going to do, and then you had an avenue to do it, and then you just went through it. And then, especially in this career where it's better to start off young because it's a physical
Correct.
job. So yeah, no, you went to the So do you went to a pop out class, and
Correct.
you're in the academy? How long was that? How long was the pop out process for you?
If I want to serve my memory correctly, it was 2 to 3 weeks. We weren't in there that long, if that makes sense. I don't know the exact dates, but it was just enough for us to show the instructors that we were competent. And if we were not competent, that they would give us a brush up on certain skills, run us through basically all the firefighter 1, firefighter 2, and EMT testing to make sure we were at the baseline competency level. And then if we failed those tests, we weren't proficient, then they would re-instruct us. And if some people were that flawed, then they'd make them go through the whole recruit class again.
All right. You're done with your pop out. You do some of the things. You go to your graduation because you graduate with your class, and you come out. Where do you get stationed as a rookie?
As a rookie, I get stationed at Station 29.
29.
And back then, that was probably one of my. I had a great time there, but as far as overall work experience was great, but the work schedule back then is what made me leave 29 after a year. Because back then, I'm sure you remember this, but day work was 5 10-hour days. There was only 2 hours overtime each week. It wasn't 4 10s. We had to do 48 hours, and then the extra 2 hours were overtime. So we were working a lot of hours back then, uncompensated. And then that's when everybody. Yeah, but back then nobody wanted to stay on day work for a long time.
No.
That's that reason. So a lot of people went to shift work. So day work was kind of not as a favorable schedule as it is now.
All right. So where were you assigned after you left? You left 29. Where'd you go after that?
After I left 29, back then it was just a normal fire station. It was a medic unit, a truck, and an engine. And then I went to Station 31. And back then, Station 31 was just a truck, an ambulance, and then an engine company. But back then, Station 31 was fully staffed during the day, and then the volunteer staffing provided staffing at night. So I believe we dropped down to 5 or 6 at night back then. Talking about 1992, approximately 90.
Yes, still heavily volunteered in some of these stations where a lot of the nighttime staff was quote unquote volunteered.
Correct.
All the paid were during the day, unless they couldn't. Some of the stations were 24 hours, but most of the were day work. Okay, so you're going through your stations, and which one's your favorite, do you think? Because you've been to several.
That's I enjoyed everyone's work, but I have to pick the top two would be Station 3 or Station 18. Those two were good. I think Station 3 because that was my first assignment as a captain, And even back then, when I first got assigned to Station 3, we had full staffing during the day. But at nighttime, eventually we dropped down to 4 people, including 2 medics. So it was just me and a master firefighter for the front of the house, which was the engine, truck, squad, and ambulance. And the reason why I felt like I grew as an officer was because I had the ability then to ride the front seat of the squad, the truck, the engine company, and then I had to learn how to deal with limited resources at night, because sometimes it'd just be the engine on first through house fire, at least from my station, and you wait for resources to arrive. And then when I got back to my house fire, there'd be a rescue squad call up in Company 33s. I had to grab my stuff and go on a squad. So I really perfected my skills at Station 3. And then also at Station 3, I believe you had 11 or 12 personnel there during the day. And as an officer, trying to manage 10 to 11 different personalities as a new officer can be challenging with the off-going shifts and day workers, the day work officers. You're trying to manage everybody's realistic expectations because everybody wants to get checked out on the truck, the squad, the engine company. So you have to balance everybody's personality with the mission and goal of the fire department and the priorities of what needs to be done that day for the fire station.
All right, cool. You tell me which ones you really enjoyed. Now, you don't want to say that you disliked one, but there was a few there that you really didn't like. Which, without getting too specific, which ones that you think were not because they were bad, it's because the call load wasn't good, or you tell me.
I can honestly say that I can't, like I said, when I was in that stage of my career, I enjoyed every assignment. Every day was fun at work. I enjoyed running calls. It wasn't running calls. I enjoyed meeting the different personality of individuals from the fire department, because as you know, the fire department draws as people from every aspects of life. People who are rich, people who are poor, different minorities, different people from different ethnicities. It's just a true melting pot, and you get to learn and you have fun with each other. So I can honestly say that, leaving out work schedule, I had a great time at every assignment I was at. I enjoyed everywhere I stayed. I stayed for at least 2 years. I had no complaints, and I like to say I left every place I was at better than I found it. I tried to do something to pass on to that one station, like either clean up a project or do something, because I enjoyed being there. I truly did.
All right, cool. So, back in those days, because we came up similar times, that it was quite an eclectic bunch of guys, especially at most of those stations. It was at that point, we were still trying to become more diverse is the word I would want to use. And we're in the process of getting that. But everywhere you went, I would think you were well received. It was a family environment. Am I correct by saying that? Or
Yeah, yes, it was a great family environment. I did not have any issues. There were unspoken issues with certain people, as you know, Tony.
yeah,
But that's one thing back then, is that nobody would air those issues publicly, or at least I did not have an officer who I felt that was purposely treating me like that because of my race that I was involved with. I've had some great officers over the year when I was
great.
went through the fire department as a firefighter. For other people, they've had different officers, have different experiences. But me, I've had a great experience with all the officers I work with, and I tried to take something from like an a la carte menu that I learned from each one of them as I progressed through the career, saying, hey, I can keep that in my management chest so I can use that one day when I get promoted.
Great. So now you're a firefighter. You get checked off on all these pieces. You go to different places, and now you try to promote. And we know that, and I've mentioned this on several episodes before, that transition from firefighter 3 to master is a little jump, but not as much as it used to be, because like you said, as a master in Montgomery County Fire Rescue Services, which is considered an engineer or a driver in other places, we call it a master firefighter in Montgomery County Fire Rescue Services. They can ride the front seat. At that time, they used to be the officer. What was that transition for you, going from firefighter to master to lieutenant? What was that change? Because that's a big jump.
Like you said, I believe master firefighter for firefighter and master firefighter is not that difficult of a jump, because I think you are basically, back then you used to ride the front seat a lot, but where I was assigned, it was mostly just driving and being competent and
Right.
teaching other people how to drive. And the officers who were well gifted at their craft, they would pass on to the master firefighter certain station aspects to get done. Say, hey, you run the floor, I got something to do. And I think that's one of the tools I took from the toolbox, is when, if you can delegate certain responsibilities to people who you think are going to be future leaders, and then if you can support them, I think that gives them a little bit of leeway to make some decisions and to, can I say, build some scaffolding as they go throughout the career. And
Right.
then when they get there, you can remove the scaffolding, and then they're already there. Say, hey, I'll show you, and then support you, and then you can learn. But definitely, like you said, I think the hardest jump is from driving to the right side, because the problem we have in the fire service is not a problem, but one of the traps is that we are with people for 24 hours. It's not as if I go to an office job, I leave them at 5 o'clock. We can get into a little disgruntled, they go home, but I'm with that person for 24 hours. And then also, not only with that person for 24 hours, but we could run a house fire where we're going to be depending on each other's lives. So it's kind of hard, not kind of hard, I don't want to say it, but it's just a different mentality. You can be a great officer and still, how do I want to say it? Um, you can be a great officer, but you cannot jeopardize your principles and your personality traits in order to succumb to the group of firefighters. Like, you gotta maintain your moral compass. You gotta do what's right on calls. You have to do what's right in the best interest of safety. Even though you're gonna be isolated, you gotta do what's right. And that's the hardest thing I think officers struggle with, is trying to be, certain officers trying to be part of the crew and then trying to be an officer. It's a delicate fence to ride, and it's very hard. And I'm sure, Russ, you're a new officer, especially when you got master firefighters. Back then, I was promoted when I was probably maybe 25. I got master firefighters who were 55, 58 years old, and I'm telling them what to do. So the generational gap, there are usually 3 generational gaps, and within each of your fire service careers, I would say. And then and then you got the younger firefighters too, who you have to bring along. So that is definitely the hardest transition, because you have to also, because when I was officer, I also want to make sure that I was training my people in a way that they could also get promoted and move forward. I think that's the greatest gift an officer can give to a fellow firefighter, is to get them promoted and to see them rise to the ranks, because that gave me great pleasure if you're able to assist somebody in doing that. That's a long way to answer a question. Hopefully,
No,
it
no,
answered it,
no, no.
but
There's
it's
no.
complicated.
No, it's very interesting. It's different for everybody.
Yeah.
That transition is very difficult. Your mentality changes, your thought process change, the decision making skills, they ramp up. I remember you saying, it's you're driving and everything is real slow to you, and then you get to the right side. All of a sudden, the football analogy. Now you can't see the blitzes coming. Now all of a sudden they're on you real fast. You know what I'm saying? All these things come at you real fast, and you got to make a quick decision, and it takes some time to get good at that. You was a captain, and I know you was a station commander there for a little bit at 23. Am I correct? You were station commander at
No, I was
23?
commander at 35 for a little bit. I was a captain at Station 3 and 18. I was lieutenant at Company 23 with Captain Preet.
Okay. All right.
And then from there, I got promoted to Station 3.
Okay, cool. So going through this process, you're on the floor. What's the thought process behind you starting to think about maybe evolving your career more than just putting out fires and EMS calls and rescue calls? You're transitioning now. You're trying to open up the book a little bit, try to increase your knowledge. You want to go to the occupational hazards part of it and help firefighters in that way. What made you do that transition, and what was that like when you went there as a captain and then you promoted as a battalion chief?
Well, one of the key aspects, I believe, that allowed me to put that seed in my head is that I always continued to go to school and go to college. And if you continually educate yourself, I believe you open yourself up to new ideas and new aspects of life, and you hear from different people. And a lot of times when you take college classes, there are some firefighters in there, but there are people from all aspects of life who are running businesses, who work at contractors for the government, who work in the military. And as I enjoyed the fire service, but I felt like I wanted to utilize, if I want to say, the other side of my brain. Because
Right.
after a while, I believe every incident you run is different. But um, I believe that, and there's been studies to show this, that your brain uses cognitive recognition and puts each incident into a certain place in your mind, and you use certain tools to handle that incident. It might be a one-room house fire, or two-room house fire, but your brain's still, okay, last time I pulled a inch and three-quarter line, I laid out, did all this stuff. So eventually you start getting muscle memory or muscle memorization. So I said, you know what? I just wanted to try and see if I could theoretically and just stretch the other side of my brain and see, hey, you know what? Let me go out here and see if I can't go to an office job and do something different. Because I was doing the fire department before I made that switch. I got hired, I was 18. So I would like to say I started from, it was probably 20 years, maybe a little less when I started. I was riding the fire truck for 20 years. I was like, I want something new, including the volunteer time. So then that allowed me to use some of my resources I learned in college as far as projects, as far as writing memorandums, as far as project schedules, just meeting people outside of fire and rescue, like OHR and county government, transportation in the fire rescue service, risk management in the county services. So I always wanted to feel like that I wanted to expand my knowledge and base more than just riding fire truck. And it's different for everybody. Some people want to do their whole life, but I was at the point in my career where I felt like I wanted to help out people in another way, other just the residents and citizens of Montgomery County. I wanted to help out other firefighters in a different capacity where I could give
So,
back.
okay, so you're up there now. You were a big part of that cancer initiative. We're still doing that now, actually.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that you started. What was some of the impetus for that? What was the thought process behind getting that started? I know that's something that you kind of spearheaded there for a while.
Well, I truly credit the IFF for allowing my staff and other firefighters to go to the Ribbon Symposium. And the Ribbon Symposium is a health and wellness they hold biannually, the IFF, and they introduce new ideas or new concerns from the fire and rescue across the country, including Canada. I believe Mexico, I could be wrong, to go to a wellness conference and discuss all the issues involving firefighters. And before we did cancer, one of our biggest initiatives was cardiac. And I think we really made a big difference in cardiac. And then as we evolved from the cardiac risk factors that involved firefighters, who did a good job screening, I believe, we moved on to cancer. And because of what also one of the issues with cancer, when I was at Fromm's as a battalion chief and as a captain, nobody used to see these but myself, because in order to file a workman's comp claim with the state of Maryland, a first report of injury needs to be done. So here I am now, I'm a captain and I'm a battalion chief in Fromm's. And some of these guys, I'm recognizing their last names, they retired, but they have cancer, or their spouse is filing the claim because they have passed away. And certain cancers are starting to pop up. So those two items, I believe, hit an inflection point in my mind. I was like, okay, this is pretty sad. These guys are leaving, and we've done nothing as far as cancer prevention. We were always focused on post-diagnosis. We had nothing to do preventative cancer awareness. So we looked into some things. We started some programs in order to close that gap. Because my whole goal, and the goal at Fromm's, was to, if people were injured, to get them back to work mentally and physically. And the other aspect was to make sure people had a great retirement and enjoyed it as long as possible.
Oh, okay, cool. That's good. So what are the things, that you thought could have made could have gone differently for you if you had a chance to redo, if you had a redo through your career?
You know what? I'm actually happy with where I'm at, but from far as the fire and rescue, the FROMS aspect, fire and rescue occupational medical service aspect, is that now that you're doing this podcast, one of the things that I feel like I did not do well, and I kind of just turned a blind eye to, which I wish I could have done better, was that once in a while I used to get these phone calls about firefighters struggling in retirement, or once in a while the fire and rescue psychologist used to call me and saying, "Hey, I'm still seeing this guy. Are we allowed to?" And then, we kind of run that gray area for liability reasons. But these are people who are actually depressed because they have left the fire service or they had run an incident 15 years ago that was still haunting them today. But because the way our contract was written back then is that we had limited psychology services for retired firefighters. And I used to hear it, and guys used to come in the office. I used to wonder, like, why are some of these guys, you see it, Tony, some guys stop by the firehouse. I think
Yeah.
those guys still are trying to fill a void. And I can see that that was a blind spot to me. If I could, talk to somebody and say, you know what, we should have a plan when somebody enters the drop and start preparing them 3 years out. Because once midnight hits that day, you think it's a slow process. They call
No,
me
it's
email. I mean, you can't walk in the firehouse and get a cup of coffee at 10 a.m. without a mask. It's just, but it's something that needs to be addressed, and people need to have purpose in their lives when they leave the fire service.
yeah, no, this is it's funny that we have this podcast because we've said this in earlier shows and probably at the beginning of this podcast. Russ was the impetus of me talking about this because we talk about it all the time, and not just with each other, with other firefighters. And we brought on the idea about why don't we just talk about it on some kind of platform. And this is how we came up with something like this to do this. And hopefully we're starting to bring this out a little bit, and I want to continue to grow this a little more and get some health wellness folks in here also to do some
Yeah,
stuff. And maybe, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that people still have issues when they leave, and that was kind of the main reason why we wanted to do this.
yeah. And it's okay for people to have issues. And that's
Yeah,
why I think people need to normalize that. Yes, everybody's going to go through it. And yes, everybody feels a different degree of where you're at separation. But everybody feels a little bit. Some people feel a large amount. My dad used to tell me that one of the best jobs he had was in the military. He loved putting a uniform on. He still talked about it, even though he was out of the military for 30 years. So I
wow.
think that
Yeah.
you can prepare yourself for leaving to have purpose, to have hobbies, to have something to fill your time. Because you can't just, I think, leave the fire service or military. Some people can leave 5% and just never look back, but most people need something to fill their time and purpose. Family, friends, travel, hobbies. You know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about if you do this job for 20 years or 30 years, now that's decades of you have a regimented time when you get up, you have a time when you show up to the firehouse, you have a routine that you go through, you're with people who are like-minded, who think the same way that you do, at least about doing the job. They can relate to the things that you see and experience the same way. They can that you guys are on the same page in so many different ways. And if you go through a call that's really impactful, either for the positive or for the negative, that they can relate. They know what you're thinking. They know the sad things that you experience, and you don't have to explain it. They just know. And so when you step away from that, I can imagine that's got to be really, really hard.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And then also to touch upon that is that I believe that it was a little bit easier transition for me because I was not assigned to a shift when I left. I was in basically a staff job. So I saw some nurses. I saw another captain who worked underneath me. But other than that, I was in the office like a normal day job. But I could imagine that if I was in a fire service, the separation would be harder to leave a shift than it would be for me to leave a staff position, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I think
absolutely.
back to that first episode we had with Chief Thomas and how when he got to ride the fire truck for the last time,
Yeah.
when he took his gear off, just how it hit him so powerfully. I mean, I can
Yeah,
only imagine.
yeah.
Um,
I wouldn't subject myself to that.
so
That's
yeah,
tough. It is. And
yeah,
not only that, but also, my kids saw me as a firefighter a little bit. So, just I think that's when you start thinking, and what made me retire, I think, is that remember I said every assignment was great, everything was fun, but then everything started to feel like work. And then I still gave 100%, but I always told myself that I wanted to be one of these people that left a little too early to stay too late. Because I've seen what happens when people stay too late. There's a dish in the dishwasher or something's not right. They treat everything as if it is a major event. And I told myself I didn't want to be a type of cancer that was, I want to be remembered as a positive person, good person. So as soon as I said, you know what, this is starting to become not as fun as when I first got hired. Everything started to load on and said it's time for me to reevaluate where I'm at in my life and what I want to do next.
yeah, yeah. So on that same vein, tell us about that last shift that you worked and when you were going to retire after the end of the day. Tell us about that.
Well, the last shift I worked was actually the day of my retirement party. So it was like a culmination of everything. But before that, they had knew I was leaving, so I got a chance to pass on some of my expertise to replacing a person replacing me. But it was still hard because once you retire, some of the people you see all the time become further and further apart. You might meet certain people for lunch, your true friends you see outside of work, but any friendships that you have not established outside of work, I'm not saying that they're not there, but they're just not as readily available. You have to work to maintain certain friendships. And my last day of work, I just looked upon my career and my service, and I was just thinking to myself, I said, you know what? I hope that I made a difference and was able to affect people's lives through getting them back to work early or hooking them up with psychologists. But I always tried to, even on fire calls or FROMs, I always tried to use the word empathy because I always wanted to put myself in somebody else's shoes before I made a decision. Or if I'm in the fire department, I've never had, knock on wood, but I'm gone now, I've never had a complaint against me on call because even at 3 in the morning, when somebody's laying down, they're injured their leg, and they call you, and it's somebody's grandmother, I always tell myself, what would I would want to, this was my mom laying on the ground. So I always pre-emphasize any decision I made at work or anything because everybody's came to this job with different experiences, different starting points. Some people's dads were fourth generation firefighters. Somebody didn't know anything about the fire department. So before I judge anybody, I would listen to them, talk to them, and then try and empathize to see what lens they were viewing everything through. And then hopefully, I always ask myself that when people see me and view back, that I was always there to help. That's the only lens I would like to be looked at.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a great lens to be viewed through and to have that perspective of, hey, what would I want to be done for me, or how would I want to help this person? I think if you have that lens and view of calls and everything throughout your career, you'll never go wrong.
Especially in fire service, I think sometimes is that now the radios are so accessible. I think that one thing in the fire department that I think we should try and work on is that I think you all been there is that when you run an incident, somebody makes a mistake, they miss a hydrant, don't say anything, and it's like everybody in Montgomery County hears it, and it's like
the whole world hears it.
I think that's a mistake. It's different between making a mistake and intentionally doing something. And I think as a fire service, what people don't understand is I think that 99% of the people who make that mistake, they feel so internally crushed that they don't need more people to jump on them and criticize. Because everybody, usually most people in the fire department in the front seat, they are harder on themselves than other people are. So it should be more of a teachable moment. And that's one thing I wish we would do more is if a mistake happens, somebody does something, ask them what's going through their head. Because like I said before, everything sounds good on the radio, on calls, but maybe the driver, he told the guy to lay out, the driver missed a hydrant, or a car shot across the last minute, which caused the driver and the officer to lose their focus to somewhere else. But things happen for a reason. And I just wish that if we were a little bit more in the fire service, I think more people would take chances as far as with the careers and move up and feel more supportive to grow their careers. That makes sense what I'm saying. Let's try different stuff.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
And I think we can be good with being empathetic towards other people, but I think by and large we struggle with being empathetic towards ourselves.
Correct.
Yes. Well, we have to take care of each other, and sometimes I get lost on hyper competitiveness. It gets lost in that sometimes, but we got to take care of each other, not when all the chips are down, when everything's okay. Build each other up.
Correct. It's very important in this fire service, very important.
Yeah. So once you retire and you walk out of that office for the last time and you enter into retirement life, tell us a little bit about that first month of retirement. What was that like?
I'll tell you about that first morning. I did try to log in and it doesn't work. I was like, whoa, they ain't playing around. This thing disappears at midnight. All access. But no, the first month of retirement, it really takes, you go from 100 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour because all of a sudden the emails stop. They're gone. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm here with just, my family and my friends. And you just have to start rebuilding, or what do I want to say? Not rebuilding, but you just want to expand upon things you were doing part-time can now become full-time. So if you were traveling, then all of a sudden traveling can be a great aspect of your life. For me, I'm spending more time with my kids. Like they're in travel sports and doing stuff. So between the hours of 4:00 and 9:00 at night, I'm usually driving kids around at practices. I spend more time with my parents. And the first year I retired was a year COVID hit. So I was a stay-at-home dad teaching school for a year. And then my dad became sick. Then I was a primary care provider for him before he passed. So it seemed like in retirement, there was something there for me always to fill my time. So now as I go into the middle of 2024, I'm very excited because COVID is gone. My dad has passed away, so I have more time for myself to really see what the next version of me is going to be. And I'm kind of excited about that. Where before I had to take care of some other people, which is great. God put that in there for a reason. When I retired, everything seemed to be chronologically in order. But now it's like, okay, this is me now. What do I want to do with myself?
Yeah. Yeah, you get to focus on you a little bit now and the development of Tony Coleman. Yeah,
the next chapter, And
I think, like I said, when people get to that drop period, they should really start thinking about what is next, because it is an abrupt change. It's for the good, for the bad, for certain people. But either way, I really feel sorry for the people who go out on disability, not on their terms, because some of these people really love this job and they had to leave under unfortunate circumstances. But we tried as a fire and rescue service to make the fall as easy as possible, because it is hard to leave. 1 minute you're enjoying this job, next minute you have to retire because of a disability.
Yeah. We when we talked to Pedro Meneses about that, I think that really came through. He was thinking about different things, but then at the same time, he an injury kind of pushed him more towards retirement, and he's had some time reflecting back on what did I really do the right thing. So yeah, I can see how that would be hard.
I tell everybody retirement is different. Everybody retirement means something different for you, Russ, for you, because. But also, I tell people if you're having fun, then stay. But everybody knows when is when for themselves, and it's hard to grasp that though. But I always tell people stay as long as you can. It's a great job. It's fun, but you will know when it's time to retire. And then that's what I tell everybody. And if you're having any doubts, take off for a month or 2 months. Don't have any contact with the fire department. Take leave and see how you feel. And give it a dry run and see. But I tell everybody, you do what's right for you, and you will know when it's time for you to retire.
Nothing wrong with taking some time off to evaluate and get your thoughts and ducks in a row to make sure you're headed in the direction you want to be headed.
And talk with other retirees. See what positive things they did and what mistakes they made before you make a decision. And after you go into the drop, talk to other people. Say, hey, what else can I do? Talk to other retirement people because they have a lot of information to provide to other firefighters who have walked the walk you're getting ready to walk.
Yeah.
Good.
So in retirement, now that you've had a chance to kind of reflect on your career a little bit longer, how has your view of the world changed based upon the things that you experienced as a firefighter?
You know what? As a firefighter, it has both positive and negative. The positive ways I cherish each day of my kids and family because I get one thing about the fire service is I can say is that because of this job is that I have no financial wants. My health insurance is taken care of. It allows me to still be a provider for my retirement, for my family through my retirement, my pension. I have no complaints. But one thing negative thing I did grab from the fire department is just a little bit of anxiety because whenever somebody doesn't call me or my mom doesn't call me that morning, okay, is she okay? Did she fall? Or if my wife is working late and then she comes home, I'm always, okay, what time she be home? Because I'm always assuming the worst because I've seen the worst out of the most smallest things. And then so I always make sure that that's one thing. Even my kids say, "Man, you worry about a lot of stuff." Well, I was in a career where things happen that people didn't expect to happen. So I always tell my son to wear his helmet, or it's just if that makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
It's just that's one thing I wish I could remove from the fire department. But when you've seen things happen, most routine things happen become the worst days of people's lives, and that does stay in the back of my mind.
Absolutely.
For sure. So you kind of mentioned this a little bit, the things that you like to do right now, like spending time with your family, you get to spend time with your kids. How, I guess looking back on it now, how did your career affect your family, your wife, your children, parents? How did your family, how were they affected because of your career?
You know what? Because of the fire service, it allowed me to be a better husband, a better father. And what I say about that, because the fire service gave me the ability to change my career work schedule. So when I was first married, I was on day work. So I got a chance to build a relationship with my wife by being off with her schedule, nights and weekends. And then as we evolved as a family, I said, hey, I need to get more time off to raise my daughter who was just born because my wife works full time. So I went to shift work and my mom assisted me as far as dealing with daycare. So the fire service has always given me the opportunity to take care of my family through work schedule or through me just being able to take leave and being present. That's one of the key things that I've learned from that. But with that, I'd say that the fire service is that nights and weekends I did miss some family events, and I wasn't able to be present as much stuff as I wanted to be back then.
All right.
Yeah.
That makes sense, man. It's just tough. It's tough on the family. It's tough on everybody. The schedule, the stress, they're kind of serving with you. You know what I'm saying? They're kind of working this thing with you. You know what I'm saying? They're getting what's left over
Right.
of all that you gave.
You all do it when you work sleep. I mean, it's,
Yeah, no,
know,
it's sleep deprivation is real, and we talked about it probably on every episode we've had so far. We've mentioned sleep as a major issue in the fire service across the country, and any shift work type of deal, nurses, doctors, sleep deprivation is a real issue. So what's something that the general public often misunderstands about being in the fire department, man? Because it's not Chicago Fire. So
yeah, I think they misunderstand, the general public, is the amount of psychological and physical tolls that this job brings over 30 years. And everything that you said just right, Chicago Fire. But when you see a baby who has died, or when you see somebody's house burned down, or you see, everybody sees the fire truck, but nobody sees all the training it took to get there. Nobody sees,
right.
you running up 5 steps. Nobody knows you've been through 2 bottles trying to put out this apartment fire. The physical and the mental toll this body takes. And eventually, everybody has back pains. Everybody has knee pains. It's just part of the job. So I think that's one thing I think the public doesn't understand is behind the curtain what this does to each individual.
Yeah. What would you say? Speaking about that, since this job, you give it a lot. You give a lot. It gives back, but you give a good part of who you are by choice, obviously, because you love the job. What would you recommend? What would your recommendations would be, or the things you would say to firefighters on the job right now? Because I mean, you haven't been going that long. We mentioned your name. They know who you are.
Yeah.
They ask about you. What would you tell them?
I would say to take care of your fire service body or yourself. And by me, I mean physically, continue to eat healthy, do your screenings and exams, work out, make sure you pay attention to anything you might see as far as sleep deprivation or any type of stress, and go talk to somebody. It's okay to not be okay now. Before me and you, we couldn't go talk to anybody.
Yeah, no, there was nobody to talk to.
It's okay to talk to people because it really does help. Even
Yeah.
when, talk to your officer, tell them what's wrong. Mentally, like I said, once again, take care of yourself mentally. And it's okay to take a day of leave once every 2 months just to have a day set aside for yourself. Preserve yourself. Mentally, and also mentally, physically, financially. Also, start planning from to retire the day you leave. The drop is nice, but you're also going to need another pot of money. So prepare financially. Also, family. Take care of your family because in the end, that's what you're going to have left. So be physically, mentally, financially, and family. Those would be the 4 pillars I would recommend that everybody to pay attention to and make sure that those 4 pillars sustain you as throughout your career and when you retire throughout the fire service.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff comes to us a little bit at a time and all at once, especially the emotional stuff tied to this job. And then the physical stuff is accumulative, shoulders, knees, always in a constant state of trying to make sure that you can stay up on top of it all.
Also, look out for each other because here in the fire service, we have a high rate of divorce. I haven't been able to figure it out,
Oh,
but
yes.
it's important that if you see somebody struggling in marriage, you can say, hey, you know what? Why don't you go talk to somebody about that? Or say, hey, I went through this. Open up with people. Sometimes open up to bad some people and joke around about stuff. That's the fire service. But truly, I think, when to me, if one person gets divorced on ship, it should feel like all of us are getting divorced because we are a family at work
Yeah.
and outside work. And if we can, because I always felt like we haven't had in a while, Tony, but remember there was a day when we were losing one person a year because of suicide.
Yeah,
And
we
that
were.
I have not heard that happen in a long time, but for a while, and we kind of slowly got our arms around that, which is great now. But a lot of people I've worked with committed suicide, and I just wish, I wish I would have. It was maybe I saw them like 5 months where they did, or 4 months, but I wish we would have had longer conversations about life and just seeing where they're at. Because maybe I could have made a difference, probably not, but that always lingers in the back of my mind when you see people who committed suicide and look back upon it. And there's little trails of stuff, but you really
Yeah,
can't.
it's tough, man. It's tough. I've seen several employees out of my recruit class commit suicide. So when you wake up now and you look in the mirror, how do you feel about the guy looking back at you? And what do you say to him?
You know what? I can say that I had a great career. It was fun. I can honestly say that when I went to work, I worked 100%. I didn't. I had 100% attitude, and that's why I left early. I didn't want to come in there, and because I always told myself when I was out in the field, I was like, you know what? The day I stopped wanting to train or teach people what this job encompasses, that it's time for me to leave. Because I never wanted to be the officer where I was laying on the couch last days for like a year, and all of a sudden somebody gets hurt because my shift was deficient in skills or wasn't proficient. So I said, you know what? The day I stop wanting to train, it's time for me to leave because I'm afraid somebody's going to get hurt. And when I look in the mirror, hopefully my personality and my um, character traits that I was able to leave Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service better than I found it. And I think I did. Everybody looks back and says they wish they could have done certain things better. But as a whole, I can look back and say I can hang my fire coat on what I did, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I think just looking back on my interactions with you and my times with you, you were always someone that I respected. You were someone that I looked up to and admired. And I'll end with this funny story. So when I got out of the academy, it was 2005, and I think I finished my probation, and I was getting detailed around, and I got to work at Station 18, where you were the captain at the time, and we were on the engine company together, and we went to a dumpster fire, and we get there, and sure enough, this dumpster is rolling. It is fully ablaze, and so I get off and I pull the hose line and I'm getting ready to put my SCBA on, put my face piece on, and you come up to me and say, "Man, don't put that on. You don't need that." And I go ahead and knock that fire out. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I went and I opened the line up and started hitting the fire. And of course, all the smoke rushes right back into my face, and I spent for the next minute just coughing right there on the ground.
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. That drove you to go to proms.
What's the
Exactly.
olive fire? You'd be all right. Just a little bit of trash, cardboard. It was a recycling cardboard dumpster.
That's right. That's right.
Oh
But
man, but times have changed. Like I said, we were taught a different mentality, and then now,
Yeah.
some of the stuff I remember that Tony was there that we used to run gas leaks in the front of a house, and we used to dig the gas leaks out, put soap and water down, and
I
cut the
was
gas leak
I
off.
was just going over that SOP hadn't changed. We don't do it anymore. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, we that's highly not recommended to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Let the gas company yellow. But those are evolutional changes that I'm glad the fire service made. Like even the 2 in 2 out and all that stuff, because it's just I think right now as a fire service, you know, some of the tradition is not what it used to be, but it's heading in the right direction as far as firefighter safety, education, and I think that crew resource management people are talking about a lot more issues outside work, mentally, physically, financially. There's a lot more resources for firefighters. I think the fire service is headed in the right direction.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
We're definitely taking steps forward. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. A lot of positive change has come about, I think, especially in terms of cancer screenings, especially in terms of mental health, in terms of taking care of our fitness, in both how we exercise and how we eat, and making sure people have time to take off and give themselves opportunities to relax and refresh. I think the fire service is definitely moving in a good direction.
Okay.
So
I think
yeah.
And there's one of the thoughts to say is that I think we are definitely just like I just like the way the fire service and all these things that the union is putting in place, and with retirement and all the stuff we just mentioned, is allowing firefighters, the screenings, the cancer screenings, all this stuff, is to live a better life in retirement. And that's what the goal should be, to get through your career safely. And after we exit, to see how long we can get a healthy retirement.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Well, Chief Coleman, we thank you so very much for sitting down to talk with us. We really appreciate you sharing your career with us and sharing your experiences. And if there was a way that people could get in touch with you, if they wanted to get in touch with you, what would that be?
Please feel free to email me at Coleman, Coleman, Tony, Tony, 08 at gmail.com.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fantastic, man. And thank you for joining us, man. I've known you a long time. It's always, great talking to you. Just wanted to leave you with the fact that, bro, you did a good job. Job well done. You did good, son. You did good.
Well, thank you. And like I said, my whole point of doing this was just to pass back to future retired firefighters some things I've learned and some of the things that keep people well and safe and enjoy a great retirement with their friends and family.
Absolutely.
So with that, we're going to sign off. Again, Tony Coleman, thank you so very much for taking the time to talk to us, and thank you everybody for taking the time to listen. So see you next time.
To the next time. Take care.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the When the Smoke Clears podcast. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on Instagram at When the Smoke Clears podcast, or you can email us at whenthesmokeclears8@gmail.com. That's when the smoke clears and the number 8 at gmail.com.